Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, staring out at the endless void of space. 25 years had passed since humanity was thrown out of the Galactic Coalition. 25 long years of drifting through empty space, fighting to survive while the rest of the galaxy forgot they ever existed. The bridge was quiet except for the low hum of failing life support systems. Morrison watched the readouts on his command screen, each red warning light telling the same story. They were dying slowly, one system at a time. "Captain," Commander Lisa Hayes called from her station. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could hear the worry underneath. "We're getting a distress signal." Morrison turned to face his tactical officer. Hayes had been with him since the beginning, back when they still believed the Coalition would realize their mistake and let humanity return. That hope died long ago. "Where's it coming from?" Morrison asked. "Sector 7. It's a human settlement." Hayes pulled up the data on the main screen. "They're under attack." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. Human settlements were rare now. Most had been wiped out by alien raiders or had simply died when their equipment failed. The few that remained were scattered across the dark edges of space, forgotten by everyone except the pirates who hunted them. "How many ships are attacking them?" Morrison asked. "Looks like a Corvan raiding party. 3 vessels, all armed." Hayes replied. "The settlement is calling for any human ships to help them." Dr. Carl Bennett looked up from his science station. "Captain, if we respond to that signal, everyone will know we're still here. The Coalition thinks humanity is extinct. If we show ourselves—" "I know the risks," Morrison said. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had followed him through hell for 25 years. They had watched their families die, their homes burn, their entire civilization crumble, but they were still here, still fighting. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Ryan Tucker spoke from the communications console. "I'm picking up chatter from the attacking ships. They're Corvan slavers. They're not just raiding the settlement, they're taking prisoners." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. He could ignore the distress call. Keep the Retribution hidden and safe. Let those people die so his ship could survive a little longer. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice, but it wouldn't be human. "Hayes, plot a course for Sector 7. Maximum speed," Morrison ordered. "Sir, our engines are all ready." "Running past safe limits," Chief Engineer Alex Carter called from his station. "If we push them harder, we might lose power completely." "Then we better make this rescue count," Morrison replied. "Tucker, send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell her to keep the civilian fleet hidden no matter what happens." "Admiral Patricia." Stone commanded what remained of humanity's civilian population. 50,000 people spread across a dozen colony ships, all of them barely holding together. If the Retribution was destroyed, she would be their only protection. The Retribution jumped to faster-than-light speed, its old engines screaming in protest. Morrison had pushed this ship beyond its limits so many times, he was surprised it still flew at all. But somehow it kept going just like its crew. "Dropping out of FTL in 30 seconds, Hayes announced. Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." The ship shuddered as it dropped back into normal space. Immediately, the main screen filled with fire and destruction. The human settlement was built on a small asteroid, its dome habitats glowing against the dark rock. 3 Corvan ships circled it like sharks, their weapons tearing holes in the settlement's defenses. "They've breached the main habitat," Dr. Bennett reported. "I'm reading massive hull damage and atmosphere loss." "Hayes, target the lead Corvan ship. All weapons full power," Morrison commanded. "Sir, they haven't seen us yet," Hayes said. "We have the element of surprise." "Good. Let's use it." The Retribution's weapons lit up the darkness. Energy beams and kinetic rounds slammed into the first Corvan raider before it could react. The alien ship's shields flared and died, its hull cracking open like an egg. "First target down," Hayes reported with satisfaction. The other 2 Corvan ships turned toward the Retribution, their weapons charging. Morrison had faced Corvan raiders before. They were brutal but not very smart. They relied on numbers and surprise, not tactics. Evasive maneuvers, Morrison ordered. Don't let them get a clean shot. The Retribution danced between the enemy ships, its guns never stopping. Carter had managed to keep the weapons powered despite their failing systems, and Dr. Bennett had improved their targeting computers using salvaged alien technology. The second Corvin ship exploded in a ball of fire. The third tried to run, but Hayes was faster. Her missiles caught it before it could jump to FTL, turning it into scrap metal and plasma. All enemy ships destroyed, Hayes announced. Morrison opened a channel to the settlement. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Retribution. What's your status? A woman's voice answered, shaky with relief. Captain, this is Maria Santos, settlement leader. We've got massive damage and casualties, but we're alive. Thank you for saving us. We're sending shuttles to help with repairs and medical aid, Morrison replied. But we need to talk. All of us. 3 hours later, Morrison sat in the settlement's damage command center with Maria Santos and her surviving leaders. The attack had killed 30 people and destroyed half their life support systems. Without help, they would all be dead within a month. The galaxy thinks we're extinct, Morrison explained. The coalition divided up human space between the member species. Our colonies, our worlds, everything we built. It's all gone. Maria shook her head in disbelief. But surely someone knows the truth. Someone must have protested. The Zelrani Empire made sure everyone believed we were too dangerous to live, Morrison said. They said we were building illegal AI weapons, that we were a threat to galactic peace. Most species were happy to believe it because it meant more territory for them. So what do we do now? Maria asked. Morrison looked out through the cracked dome at his ship floating in space. The Retribution was old and damaged, its crew exhausted, its mission unclear. But it was still flying, still fighting. We survive, Morrison said, and we make sure the galaxy remembers that humanity isn't dead yet. As the shuttles worked to repair the settlement, Dr. Bennett made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the Corvin ship's computers was information that proved Morrison's worst fears. The galaxy hadn't just forgotten about humanity. It was about to make the same mistake again. Dr. Carl Bennett sat in his lab, staring at the data from the destroyed Corvin ships. The information he had found made his blood run cold. He had seen many terrible things during humanity's exile, but this was different. This was proof that everything they had suffered was just the beginning. He pressed the communication button on his desk. Captain Morrison to the lab. Priority 1. Minutes later, Morrison arrived with Commander Hayes and Lieutenant Commander Tucker. They could see the worry on Bennett's face before he even spoke. What did you find, Carl? Morrison asked. Bennett pulled up the data on his main screen. The Corvin ships weren't just random raiders. They were working for someone. Look at this. The screen showed payment records and communication logs. Bennett had spent hours translating the alien text, but the message was clear. They were paid by Zelrani agents, Bennett continued. The same Zelrani who got us kicked out of the coalition. They've been hiring raiders to attack human settlements for years. Hayes leaned forward to study the data. Why would they bother? Everyone thinks we're extinct anyway. Because we're not the only ones, Bennett said grimly. He pulled up another file. Look at this communication log. The Zelrani are planning something big. They're going to accuse another species of the same crimes they pinned on us. Tucker read the alien text slowly. His face went pale as he understood what it meant. The Thalassans. They're going to claim the Thalassans are building illegal AI weapons. Morrison felt his fists clench. The Thalassans were an aquatic species known for their peaceful nature. They had been among the few coalition members who had spoken against humanity's exile, though their protests had been ignored. It's the same pattern, Bennett explained. First, they plant evidence, then they get the coalition to declare the species a threat. Finally, they divide up the territory among coalition members, with the Zelrani taking the biggest share. How many species have they done this to? Morrison asked. Bennett brought up a star chart showing the expansion of Zelrani territory over the past century. Red zones marked areas that had once belonged to other species. 6 that I can confirm. The Corvani, the Deltans, the hegemony of Crix, the Stellar Confederacy, the Void Dwellers, and us. All of them were accused of developing illegal weapons. All of them were wiped out or exiled. Hayes studied the chart with growing anger. They're not just expanding their territory, they're committing genocide and calling it peacekeeping. The coalition believes them because the Zelrani control most of the evidence, Tucker added. They have the biggest fleet, the most advanced technology, and the most political influence. When they say a species is dangerous, everyone listens. Morrison walked to the window of the lab and looked out at the damaged human settlement. The people there were working to repair their homes, grateful to be alive. They had no idea that their salvation might have come too late to save anyone else. When are they planning to move against the Thalassans? Morrison asked. Bennett checked the timeline in the stolen data. 3 months. They're already planting evidence on Thalassan worlds. When they're ready, they'll call for a coalition vote to declare them a threat. And the coalition will vote yes, just like they did with us. Hayes said bitterly. Morrison turned back to his officers. Not if we stop them. Tucker looked at him in surprise. Sir, we're one ship with a crew of 300. The coalition has thousands of vessels and millions of troops. How can we possibly stop them? The same way we've survived for 25 years, Morrison replied, by being smarter, faster, and more determined than they expect. He called up the settlement's communication system and sent a message to Admiral Stone. Within an hour, the leaders of humanity's scattered survivors were gathered in a virtual conference room aboard the Retribution. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen, her gray hair and lined face showing the strain of keeping the civilian fleet together. Around her were the captains of the few remaining human military vessels and the leaders of the surviving colonies. Jake, Carl's report is troubling, Stone said, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. We barely have enough resources to keep our own people alive. Captain Danny Rodriguez of the scout ship Defiance spoke up. The Admiral's right. We can't take on the entire coalition. It would be suicide. Morrison looked around the virtual room at the faces of humanity's leadership. These people had seen their worlds burn and their families die. They had watched their species be erased from galactic history. He understood their caution. We're not going to attack the coalition, Morrison said. We're going to expose the truth. Dr. Bennett stepped forward. The evidence is all here in the Corvin data files. Communications between Zelrani agents, payment, records, even instructions on how to plant fake evidence. If we can get this information to the right people, we can prove what the Zelrani have been doing. Who would believe us? Asked Captain Sarah Kim of the cargo vessel New Hope. We're supposed to be extinct. Even if we contacted the coalition, they'd just think we were terrorists trying to cause trouble. We don't contact the coalition, Morrison replied. We contact the species that haven't been corrupted yet. The ones who still remember what the galaxy was like before the Zelrani took control. Tucker brought up a list of potential allies. The Drakmor clans have been fighting border wars with the Zelrani for decades. The Kylorian merchant guilds have lost trade routes to Zelrani expansion. There are others who have reasons to oppose them. It's not enough, Stone said. Even if we convince some species to listen, what then? The Zelrani still have the biggest fleet. Morrison smiled grimly. Then we make sure they can't use it. Over the next week, the Retribution worked with the settlement to repair their defenses and upgrade their equipment. But Morrison's real focus was on preparing for something much bigger than a rescue mission. Chief Engineer Carter had been working around the clock to modify the ship's systems. Using technology salvaged from the Corvin raiders and innovations developed during their long exile, he was turning the Retribution into something the galaxy had never seen before. The modifications are almost complete, Carter reported to Morrison. But sir, I have to ask, are you sure about this plan? Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back. Morrison looked out at the stars, thinking about the Thalassans who were about to face the same fate as humanity. Somewhere out there, families were going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire civilization was about to be erased. We've been hiding for 25 years, Alex, Morrison said. Maybe it's time the galaxy remembered what happens when you try to destroy humanity. The Retribution finished its repairs and prepared to leave the settlement. But this time they weren't running away. They were going home to a galaxy that had tried to forget them. The war for truth was about to begin. The asteroid field looked empty from the outside, just another patch of floating rocks in the void between star systems. But deep inside the largest asteroid, humanity was preparing for war. Chief Engineer Alex Carter wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the final modifications being installed on the Retribution. The ship looked different now, its hull covered with new armor plating and weapon systems that had never existed before. "The energy shields are online," Carter reported to Captain Morrison. "We've managed to reverse the polarity of Zelrani weapon frequencies. Their own energy beams will bounce back at them." Morrison nodded as he studied the technical readouts. "What about the kinetic weapons?" "Railguns are ready. We're using dense metal cores from the asteroid belt, accelerated to near light speed. They'll punch through any armor the Coalition has." Dr. Bennett joined them at the engineering station. "The electronic warfare systems are complete too. We can jam their communications, disrupt their targeting computers, and even take control of their automated systems." "How did you manage all this with our limited resources?" Morrison asked. Carter grinned. 25 years of jury-rigging broken equipment teaches you things the Coalition engineers never learned. Plus, we had help." He pointed to a group of people working on weapon systems. They weren't all human. Morrison recognized Kylorian mechanics, Drakmor warriors, and even a few other species he didn't know. "Word has been spreading through the underground. Networks," Bennett explained. "Species that have lost territory to the Zelrani, merchants who have been squeezed out of trade routes, anyone who has a reason to oppose the Empire. They're starting to help us." Lieutenant Commander Tucker approached, with a datapad in his hands. "Captain, we've established contact with resistance cells in 12 systems. The Drakmor clans are ready to provide military support. The Kylorians are offering supply lines and intelligence." "What about the Thalassans?" Morrison asked. Tucker's expression darkened. "They still don't believe they're in danger. Their government thinks the Zelrani accusations are just political pressure. They're refusing our offers of help." Morrison understood the Thalassan position. It was hard to believe that the galaxy's peacekeeping force was actually planning your destruction, especially when you had done nothing wrong. "We'll have to protect them whether they want our help or not," Morrison decided. Commander Hayes entered the command center, her uniform torn and dirty from combat training. Behind her came a group of new recruits, former civilians who had volunteered to become soldiers. "How's the training going?" Morrison asked. "Better than expected," Hayes replied. "These people have been through hell for 25 years. They know how to fight. They just needed to learn how to fight together." She pulled up a roster on the main screen. "We've got 300 experienced crew on the Retribution, plus another 200 volunteers from the civilian fleet. Admiral, Stone wasn't happy about losing people, but she understands what's at stake." Morrison looked at the faces of the new recruits. Young and old, men and women, all of them carrying the weight of humanity's suffering. They had lost homes, families, entire worlds. But they were still here, still willing to fight. "Have you heard from our other assets?" Morrison asked Tucker. "Yes, sir. Captain Rodriguez has the Defiance positioned near the Zelrani border. He's been intercepting military communications and mapping their fleet positions. Captain Kim is running supplies between our hidden bases." Tucker brought up a tactical display showing the current positions of Zelrani forces. "They're moving ships toward Thalassan space, but slowly. They want it to look like routine patrols until they're ready to strike." Dr. Bennett had been analyzing the enemy fleet composition. "The Zelrani have 47 warships in the region, plus support vessels, but they're spread out across multiple systems. If we hit them fast and hard, we can take out their command structure before they can coordinate a response." "What about Coalition reinforcements?" Hayes asked. "The nearest Coalition fleet is 6 days away at maximum speed," Tucker replied. "If we time this right, we can expose the Zelrani conspiracy and cripple their military capability before anyone else can intervene." Morrison studied the tactical display for a long moment. Everything they had worked for over the past 25 years came down to this moment. Success would mean saving the Thalassans and exposing the truth about the Zelrani. Failure would mean the end of humanity's last hope. Alex, how long until the ship modifications are complete? Morrison asked. 6 hours, Carter replied. The crew is working around the clock to finish the weapon installations. Good. Lisa, I want all combat personnel ready for deployment in 8 hours. Ryan, send messages to our allies. Tell them it's time. As his officers scattered to complete their preparations, Morrison walked to the observation deck overlooking the hidden base. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see human workers and alien allies working side by side, preparing weapons and loading supplies. Dr. Bennett joined him at the window. Jake, are you sure we're ready for this? We're about to take on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Morrison watched a group of young humans learning to operate alien weapon systems under the guidance of Drakmor instructors. Carl, we've been ready for this since the day they threw us out of civilized space. We just didn't know it yet. The odds are still against us, Bennett said. The odds have been against us for 25 years, Morrison replied. But we're still here. That's what humans do, Carl. We survive things that should kill us and we come back stronger. A communication alert sounded throughout the base. Tucker's voice came through the speakers. All hands prepare for departure. We launch in 6 hours. Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders. In 6 hours, the Retribution would leave this hidden base and return to Coalition space. The galaxy that had tried to erase humanity was about to learn that some things cannot be destroyed. Send a message to Admiral Stone, Morrison told Bennett. Tell her that in 24 hours the galaxy will know that humanity is still alive. As the base hummed with final preparations, Morrison made one last check of the ship's systems. The Retribution was no longer just a warship. It was a symbol of human determination, a reminder that some species refuse to die quietly. The engines powered up with a deep rumble that echoed through the asteroid. Soon they would carry humanity back to the stars they had been forced to abandon. But this time they would not be exiles begging for acceptance. They would be conquerors demanding justice. The Coalition diplomatic station hung in space like a giant wheel, its lights twinkling against the darkness. Representatives from dozens of species were gathering for the emergency session called by the Zelrani Empire. They believed they were meeting to discuss the Thalassan threat. They had no idea they were about to witness humanity's return. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the station grow larger on the main screen. His ship was still invisible to their sensors, hidden by the stealth technology they had developed during their long exile. All systems ready, Captain, Commander Hayes reported from her tactical station. Weapons are charged, shields are up, and our electronic warfare package is standing by. Coalition fleet positions? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Commander Tucker checked his displays. 37 ships in the immediate area. Most of them are escort vessels and transports. The heavy warships are patrolled the outer system. Dr. Bennett monitored the communication channels. The Zelrani representative is about to present their evidence against the Thalassans. Once they start, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before the Coalition votes. Morrison nodded. 10 minutes to change the course of galactic history. 10 minutes to save an entire species from the fate that had befallen humanity. Ryan, are our allies in position? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. The Drakmor fleet is waiting at the system edge. The Kylorian ships are scattered throughout Coalition space, ready to broadcast our message. Captain Rodriguez has the Defiance positioned near the Zelrani home fleet. Morrison took a deep breath. For 25 years, they had been the galaxy's forgotten victims. In a few moments, they would become its greatest threat. Begin transmission, Morrison ordered. The Retribution dropped its stealth field and appeared on every sensor in the system. At the same moment, Tucker activated their communication override, taking control of every channel in Coalition space. Morrison's face appeared on screens throughout the galaxy as he began to speak. People of the Coalition, I am Captain Jake Morrison, of the United Earth ship Retribution. 25 years ago, you were told that humanity was extinct, destroyed for building illegal weapons. That was a lie. On the diplomatic station, alarms began blaring. Coalition security forces scrambled to their ships while representatives watched in shock as a dead species spoke to them from beyond the grave. The Zelrani Empire has been lying to you for over a century, Morrison continued. They have systematically destroyed 6 species using the same false accusations they used against us. Today, they plan to add the Thalassans to that list. Dr. Bennett activated the data transmission, flooding coalition networks with the evidence they had gathered. Payment records, communication logs, and detailed plans for the Thalassan operation scrolled across millions of screens. "This is all the proof you need," Morrison said. "The Zelrani are not peacekeepers. They are conquerors who hide behind your laws while they commit genocide." The coalition fleet began moving toward the retribution, their weapons charging. Admiral Vex Corvani, the Zelrani military commander, appeared on communication channels across the system. "This is a terrorist vessel spreading lies and propaganda," Corvani announced. "All coalition ships destroy the human ship immediately." Morrison smiled grimly. "Admiral Corvani, you seem to recognize us quite well for a supposedly extinct species. Tell me, how many other dead civilizations have you been fighting?" The first coalition ships opened fire, their energy beams lancing through space toward the retribution. But when the weapons struck the human ship, something impossible happened. The energy beams bounced off the shields and reflected back at their attackers. "What the hell?" one coalition captain shouted over the open channel. Commander Hayes was already returning fire. The Retribution's railguns spoke with thunder, sending metal projectiles through space at incredible speed. The first coalition ship exploded as the kinetic rounds tore through its hull like paper. "All vessels, focus fire on the human ship," Corvani ordered, but his commands fell on deaf ears. The coalition captains were watching their weapons become useless against an enemy they couldn't understand. Worse, Dr. Bennett's electronic warfare systems were jamming their communications and disrupting their targeting computers. "Hayes, take out their command ship," Morrison ordered. The Retribution turned toward Admiral Corvani's flagship, its weapons locked on target. The massive Zelrani dreadnought tried to run, but it was too slow. Hayes's missiles found their mark, crippling the ship's engines and leaving it dead in space. "This is impossible," Corvani broadcast. "One ship cannot defeat an entire fleet." "You're right," Morrison replied. "But we're not just one ship anymore." The Drakmor fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their war cries echoing across communication channels. At the same time, Kylorian merchant vessels throughout coalition space began broadcasting the evidence of Zelrani crimes to every planet in the galaxy. Morrison opened a channel to the diplomatic station. "Representatives of the coalition, you have a choice. Continue to follow the lies of the Zelrani Empire, or stand with the truth. The evidence is before you. The choice is yours." On the station, chaos had erupted in the assembly hall. Thalassan representatives were demanding answers while other species argued about the authenticity of the evidence. The Zelrani delegation tried to maintain control, but their authority was crumbling with each revelation. "The human evidence is fabricated," the Zelrani ambassador insisted. "This is exactly the kind of deception we warned you about." But Ambassador Reef Splitter of the Thalassans had been studying the data carefully. "These communication logs show Zelrani agents on our worlds 3 months ago. They were planting evidence in our research facilities." The Delvan representative stood up. "We demand an investigation into the destruction of our species 50 years ago. If the humans are right, then the Zelrani murdered billions of our people." More voices joined the calls for investigation. Species that had lost territory, trade routes, and political influence to Zelrani expansion were suddenly seeing their losses in a new light. In space, the battle continued. The coalition fleet was in disarray, their ships unable to coordinate, against the Retribution's advanced systems. Several vessels had been destroyed, while others had simply stopped fighting as their crews questioned their orders. Morrison watched the tactical display as more coalition ships backed away from the fight. "Ryan, patch me through to all coalition vessels." "This is Captain Morrison to all coalition ships. We are not your enemy. The Zelrani have been using you to destroy innocent species for their own gain. You have been tools of genocide, not peacekeepers." 1. By 1, Coalition ships began powering down their weapons. Captains who had served the Coalition faithfully for decades were seeing the truth for the first time. Admiral Corvani's voice came through the communication system, filled with rage and desperation. All loyal Coalition forces destroy the human terrorists. This is a direct order from Zelrani High Command. But his words carried no weight. The evidence was too strong, the proof too clear. The galaxy was finally seeing the Zelrani Empire for what it really was. Morrison opened a final channel to the diplomatic station. The Zelrani tried to erase humanity from history. They failed. Today we make sure they never succeed in erasing anyone else. The Retribution held its position as more allied ships arrived in the system. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and for the first time in a century, the Zelrani Empire was on the defensive. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the battle at the Coalition diplomatic station, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of humanity's new orbital command center above Earth. The blue planet turned slowly below him, its surface dotted with the lights of rebuilding cities. Earth was home again. The aftermath of humanity's return had reshaped the entire galaxy. The Coalition had voted to remove the Zelrani Empire from all leadership positions and launched investigations into their crimes. Dozens of worlds that had been taken from destroyed species were now being returned to their rightful owners, or given independence. Commander Hayes entered the observation deck carrying a datapad with the daily reports. Captain, the new fleet. Construction is ahead of schedule. We'll have 12 new warships operational within the year. Morrison nodded as he reviewed the numbers. Humanity was building more than just ships. They were building a new kind of military force, one designed to protect the innocent rather than conquer territory. What about the Zelrani resistance? Morrison asked. Still fighting in the outer systems, but they're running out of support. Most of their former allies have switched sides or declared neutrality. Admiral Corvani is still calling for coalition forces to join him, but nobody's listening. Dr. Bennett joined them at the window, his face showing the satisfaction of a scientist whose theories had been proven correct. The investigation teams have confirmed what we suspected. The Zelrani destroyed at least 8 species over the past century, not just 6. The evidence was hidden in their military archives. Any word on survivors? Morrison asked. A few scattered. Colonies similar to what we had. The Deltans have 3 settlements in the Outer Rim. The Corvan Republic had a secret fleet that's been hiding in dark space for 40 years. Morrison felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that humanity wasn't the only species to survive Zelrani genocide, but sadness for all the lives that had been lost over the decades. Chief Engineer Carter's voice came through the communication system. Captain, we're getting a transmission from the Thalassen government. They want to thank you personally. Morrison made his way to the command center, where a holographic image of Ambassador Reef Splitter appeared. The aquatic alien's translator conveyed the emotion in his voice as he spoke. Captain Morrison, on behalf of the Thalassen people, I want to express our gratitude. Your actions saved our entire civilization from extinction. We did what any decent species would do, Morrison replied. We couldn't let the Zelrani destroy another people the way they tried to destroy us. The Thalassen Council has voted to offer humanity a formal alliance, Reef Splitter continued. We want to work together to prevent future atrocities. Morrison accepted the offer gladly. The Thalassans were natural peacemakers, and their influence would help keep humanity focused on protection rather than revenge. Lieutenant Commander Tucker approached with another communication. Sir, we're getting reports from the Drakmor clans. They've successfully liberated 3 former Zelrani prison worlds. Thousands of political prisoners are being freed. The partnership with the Drakmor had proven more valuable than Morrison had expected. The warrior species had been eager to fight alongside humans, and their combined fleets had proven unstoppable against Zelrani forces. Any requests for assistance? Morrison asked. Several. The Kylorian merchant guilds want our help reopening trade routes that the Zelrani had blocked. The Delvin survivors are asking for protection while they rebuild their civilization. Morrison approved both requests. Humanity's new role in the galaxy was becoming clear. They weren't conquerors or overlords. They were guardians, using their strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Admiral Patricia Stone entered the command center, her civilian clothes replaced by the uniform of humanity's new diplomatic corps. Jake, the Coalition, Assembly has voted to establish the Galactic Protection Force. They want you to command it. Morrison looked at his old friend with surprise. Me? I'm a warship captain, not a politician. That's exactly why they want you, Stone replied. You proved that military force can be used for protection instead of conquest. The galaxy trusts you because you chose to save the Thalassans instead of seeking revenge against the Coalition. Morrison considered the offer carefully. Leading a galactic protection force would mean leaving the Retribution, giving up the ship that had been his home for 25 years. But it would also mean ensuring that no other species would suffer the way humanity had suffered. Who would take command of the Retribution? Morrison asked. Hayes stepped forward. I'd like to volunteer, sir. This ship taught me everything I know about fighting for what's right. Morrison smiled. Hayes had grown from a tactical officer into one of the finest military leaders he had ever known. The Retribution would be in good hands. What about the Zelrani Empire? Morrison asked Stone. What happens to them? The Coalition is offering them a choice, Stone replied. They can stand trial for their crimes and accept punishment, or they can be exiled to the Outer Rim like they did to us. Dr. Bennett looked up from his datapad. Most Zelrani worlds are choosing the trial option. They're claiming they didn't know what their government was doing. Morrison wasn't surprised. Throughout history, populations had often claimed ignorance when their leaders committed atrocities. The truth was usually more complicated, but the galaxy needed to heal, not seek perfect justice. Tucker received another transmission. Sir, Captain. Rodriguez is reporting success in the Vegan system. The last Zelrani holdouts have surrendered. Any casualties? Morrison asked. Minimal. The Zelrani forces gave up as soon as they saw the Retribution's new sister ships. Our reputation is preceding us. Morrison walked back to the observation window and looked out at Earth. The planet that had been humanity's cradle was now the center of a new kind of civilization. Not an empire built on conquest, but a community built on protection and mutual aid. Admiral Stone, I accept the position, Morrison said, but I have conditions. Name them. The Protection Force operates under strict rules of engagement. We protect the innocent, we don't conquer territory, and we never use our power to impose our will on other species. Agreed, Stone said. The Coalition Assembly expected those conditions. That's why they want you to lead it. Morrison took one last look at the Retribution through the window. The ship that had carried humanity through its darkest years would continue to serve, but under new command and with a new mission. Humanity had returned from exile not as conquerors, but as protectors. They had learned that true strength came not from the ability to destroy enemies, but from the willingness to defend friends. The galaxy was safer now, and humanity had found its true purpose among the stars. The long exile was over, but the real journey was just beginning.